Okay, so thanks a lot for coming today and being part of this session. This is our typical Thursday rollout of our various platform releases. Last week we did the brand new investment strategy and we've had quite a lot of feedback there. We're now getting, if you've watched any of our investment strategy, you can see now that really through the use of AI and robotic processing automation, you can now build documents that are quite tailored to your client's circumstances from a legal point of view. And it's very hard because people say, well, can I see a draft investment strategy? And I said, look, it's better to go on to our support center, have a look at the video, because there's more than 1 billion permutations. In fact, there's even more than that. It's impossible to actually have any investment strategy the same. So that's how tailored it is compared to the template. And we went through that last week. The commissioner basically saying templates are not good enough. Certainly going to be interesting around this reporting season or the compliance season when we get to when we get round to auditors signing off. Just on that one, I will be doing a breakfast session across Australia in March, so watch out for that. It's free, sponsored by Solar Investments, but I'll be going through all the investment strategies and also going through my top 5 investment strategies around pensions, around estate planning, etc., and also doing a bit of estate planning coverage. So watch out for that, book it in. Be a good breakfast session and love to have as many as possible along. This session today is the next evolution of our wills and testamentary trusts. So we've got one up on the site at the moment, which is, look, it does a really good job, but we've had lots of feedback. I wasn't 100% comfortable with it, so I've sort of come back, pulled back, and gone back to the drawing boards and made this new system, which we'll go through. The one up on the existing platform, that will then be shrunk down to be a basic will, which will be simply, I give this to my wife and so on and so forth. So that one you're not really going to need legal sign-off for. But the one we're looking at now is going to be, it's pretty strong and sophisticated, and I'll go through the legal process for you so that you guys can bring it all in-house, manage the process in-house, obviously get access to all the client's details, data, assets, wishes, and everything, and build this document in-house in draft form, and then align yourself or utilise Abbott-Family, either from a light touch to a heavy touch basis, in order to provide legal sign-off and effectively give you guys our PI coverage out of the whole process, but you guys are still making the fees out of the process. And typically for a will with testamentary trust, it's around about $1,800 to $2,000 for that. So we're going to go through it, and I'm going to give you the 3-step process, which will be looking at the client letter, looking at how to utilise the data capture, and more importantly, the appointment with a client, and then finally the sign-off, whether it's a Zoom meeting with Tony and I, or alternatively, it's just simply you might want to get us in, as we're doing next week with down Madden Accountants in Melbourne. They're simply getting a whole range of clients for us to go and see, and then we do a 70-30 split for them. So we're pretty flexible on that one. We just want to make sure that you guys do it properly, and more importantly, you do it legally. Now, from my perspective, really, for centuries, wills have been handcrafted by the legal profession who have not taken to automation. Advanced legal firms are embracing AI and robotic processing automation. In fact, most of the system that we're using is used by Gaydens, and I forget there's another firm only in Australia, or Mentor Ellison's to a lesser extent. But this concept of AI and robotic processing automation basically enables their lawyers to reduce the time spent on specific strategy or document processes, such as lodging a criminal appeal, completing a conveyance and land transfer, and now wills and testamentary trusts. So the old concept that is still involved for many of the legal firms is a cut and paste really on old precedents that's not changed for decades. So many of them are mired in systems of like 10, 15, 20 years ago, And for example, the classic one is Thomson Reuters, which are the owners of ClearDocs. Their precedent system, you can get 5,000 precedents if you're a lawyer through Thomson Reuters. Unfortunately, the precedents are very old, but you end up with a Word doc that you've then got to fill in and so on and so forth. So the beautiful thing about the LightYear doc system is it is simply light years ahead. As you can see from the investment strategy, you can cover, for example, derivatives, and LRBAs need to have a derivatives risk statement, which is required under CIS-Reg 1314, but you simply, with a touch of a button, and your client's got an LRBA, that is automatically prepared for you, it's included in the system. If you've got over 75% in cash, that is in fact on the Commissioner's radar, as we saw last week. Again, we've provided solution in there. The same with equities, the same with property. So through that, we can actually start to build these customizable documents for our clients. And the good thing about that is that with this technology that we've built, and particularly the way we're using it, because we're at the forefront, we're able to build these long tail, these long sophisticated documents that really cannot be achieved by any other legal firm or any other document provider. By being able to build that, we're effectively also giving you full access to what our system is that we use at Abbott-Family, so that if you're a licensee, or even if you're just doing a PAYG, or you are effectively on a subscription-based model, like LY firm or LY strategist, you can basically produce these to your heart's consent, consent and content, of course. So the main thing about it, though, is that you're keeping this consistency, and your client actually sees you as the provider of all of these services. So you're expanding your range of services really without doing much more. And more importantly, they're value-added services which you can charge a lot for. So you're going to see, well, I say prepare to be amazed. And look, I must admit that the stuff that I do, and I know our developers are doing, it just blows me away all the time. But we're so quick, and I've got a big backlog of documents coming down the track. Next Thursday, what we'll be doing is Tony and I will be going through the process of where Abbott-Family fits in, how to utilise our services, how to book in times, the processes and systems. So I won't go through it to any great extent. I'll leave that for next Thursday, but I really want to get you into the process and the system for you, and make it as easy as possible. So this is the second coming, the Wills and Testamentary Trust offering. What I'm going to do for this one, and I'm going to take you through the system, and I know like Ian and Grant and all you guys, I want you to go in, particularly if you're a licensee or you're an LY firm or strategist, I want you to go in, and I'm going to put it up as a test. What we'll do is we'll actually put it up as a test document. It's going to be called Wills, and in fact what we'll do is I'll call it Test Wills and Testamentary Trusts. There won't be any blurb around it, but what I'd like you to go in and do your own wills and testamentary trusts yourself. Have a read through the document, come back with any feedback so that we can do a final release in 10 days for everyone else. And then by that stage, what we'll do is I would have recrafted the original will and TT that's on the system, or the last will and testament. We'll just make that a simple last will and testament, which won't have any testamentary trust for it, so that you understand what the difference is. Now, we're going to go through, we're going to have a look at the advanced interview, which really, the good thing about it is it's not a licensed product. So accountants, financial planners, life agents, and anyone really, we've had a couple of individuals who've gone through the process. In fact, one of our shareholders, Nathan Chapman, has gone through the process himself and built a very strategic document. So, you know, this can be used in any way, shape or form for yourself. You do need to have a legal sign-off solution because it is the preparation of legal documents, but that's where Abbott-Family fits in. So what I would suggest, actually I'll leave that to a little bit later on before I come back and make suggestions. Let's get focused. So the process is essentially to send out the wills and TT. I call it a sales letter. Basically, it's an engagement letter for the client. And I'm going to go through that. You've seen it before, but I want to go through and show you how that leads then into the interview. So it's got a data capture, and what we want to do then is get the client to agree to the pricing, and then get them to complete the data capture, send it by way of fax or email, and then basically you will set up a draft will internally inside your office. And you can see you'll actually do it really quickly throughout the system. Then the next step is to have a meeting. So once it's a draft will, we can do the draft will and testamentary trust, send it out to them again for them to have a look over the document, and then come up to a final meeting. Now, alternatively, you can have us in there to do the final meeting. So you get the data capture, we can build the whole process for you, including all the documents. Then we charge the client, but then there's a 70-30 split to you. Or alternatively, just simply let us come into your office, have the meeting, you'll prepare the documents, you'll go through, we'll have the final documents there, which can then be signed off on the spot. And the cost on that is $495 per will and testamentary trust and $795 per couple. But you're going to see when we go in, it's pretty sophisticated. Or alternatively, if you don't want us in the office, arrange a Zoom meeting. The beautiful thing about this is that from your perspective, when you do a few of these, you're actually getting trained by us on the spot. What questions we ask, what issues we're looking at, covering particularly around the executorship and the succession planning in there. So it's going to end up a great training process for you as well. So I would say that either way, look at it as a training process. It's going to improve your abilities with your client and also your abilities to complete the form. But anyway, let's bounce out of here and then go straight into the system. So what I've got here is this is available, you'll see anyway, up on the LightYear Docs site. So you can see I'm a LY strategist, LY firm, or licensee will always be a LY strategist. So when we go on to our support center, this video itself will be coming up next week, and the next few hours up on the webinars and training video. I'll, again, for some of you will be attending, if you're LY strategists, you can access, obviously, my session at 12:30, which is available on Live SMSF, not here. But that has 1 hour for CPD ethics and professionalism. But the strategy info and advice toolkits, you are going to be able to get there. The will and testamentary trust letter, you'll find you just click that and then you can download it. And I've got one here for us. So let's just go through. So there's a bit of blurb. Have a read about the document. It's not an advice document. It's just simply to start a conversation with your client. So you can send this out to all your clients. Obviously, you don't send this out because I talk about the costings, etc. So you put your firm's logo up there. We'll review an update service now available. We have done, if you want Abbott-Family to take over the process so that we come in and we basically drive the whole thing with your client, much the same as we're doing Management Accountant, then there's a different letter we can basically send out there for your clients. But let's just go through what it says. We'll review an update service now available. We're writing to all our clients on the importance of having, firstly, an updated will in the event that something happens to you, and that's important. And secondly, one that provides as much protection as possible from a family provisions challenge. You may not be aware that there are a wide range of relatives, including children, grandchildren, former spouses and partners, children's spouses and other eligible persons who may make a claim on your estate after your death if they have not been looked after or feel that they have not been looked after by you and your will. So that's obviously a statement of facts. Important. A family provision claim may result in long and costly court proceedings. Well, it will, because it's a Supreme Court issue, whichever state you're in. In West Australia in 2018, the judge of a WA Supreme Court castigated lawyers who had taken 5 years and $500,000 legal fees to challenge a $600,000 estate. This is happening every day in Supreme Courts around Australia, so we do not want that to happen to you. Now, writing to let you know some exciting news that to solve the above issues, we've teamed up with lawyers and specialist estate planning advisors, Abbott-Family, to provide a wills and testamentary trust package that can be limited to your lineage or bloodline should you require. So the the two takeaways there is that really this is a service provided by Abbott-Family. Look, to be brutally honest, it's not. It's really you doing the most stuff there. But what we're doing is we're showing that Abbott-Family are there as the sign-off and the licensees. So this will ensure, but then we can make it for bloodline. This will ensure that your hard-built assets are kept in the hands of your lineage. Now, this is where it comes. The process is simple and it's crucial to get your executorship right. The person who you nominate as your executor, and this is where, honestly, wills, and you've got to think about it yourself, and this is why I encourage you, for those who've got access to the site, when I put the test will and testamentary trust up, do it for yourself. I'm going to show you what I've done for myself. I'm going to be brutal and show you exactly what I've done for myself. So I'm very, very transparent. I want you to learn from me and learn from yourself. Is that really, when it comes down to it, it's the executorship who controls that process is really the one who's going to drive it. They need to be strong, fearless, and they also need to be able to withstand the attack of lawyers and others who may challenge under the Family Provisions Act. Now, of course, of those of you who have been through with me in terms of the asset protection, looking at the protector, succession planning through the EPOAs, building the moat, which we're going to be doing on the 23rd and 24th of March. Unfortunately, it's all sold out now, but the videos will be available. That this bloodline and lineage is really important. And what we've got to make sure is the executor is also going to be the next leading member in our SMSF, and also is going to be the next leading member appointer of a family trust, and also any lineage or bloodline trust that we may create for the purposes of the protector. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Let's just focus in on wills and testamentary trusts. Anyway, this is going to the client. So the person who you nominate as your executor, may be more than one, are the persons who will look after your estate, manage any of your specific bequests, such as property going to one or more family members, jewellery to grandchildren, well, anything you desire. They can also limit any disposition of your estate to your lineage, which is your direct descendants, or to bloodline only, which may include brothers and sisters in the event that a main or specific beneficiaries are not alive. So lineage is directly down, whereas obviously bloodline is anyone with your DNA, so they can go up and down. The executor also has the power to create a trust on your death known as a testamentary trust, which can be a discretionary trust that has only beneficiaries being your lineage or bloodline. So it can be a discretionary or a fixed trust, either way. Further, testamentary trusts can provide protection for a beneficiary from litigation and an attack on the assets of the trust, including bankruptcy, a great asset protection structure with the tax advantages of a trust. And of course, if it's a testamentary trust, then the penalty provisions for the distribution of income to minors do not apply. So that's obviously the tax benefit there. No, one of the most important roles for an executor is to fend off any family provisions challenges, which is why a strong and secure will with testamentary trust is required. In the event the prospective executor is not alive or does not want the position, you should have a second in line and also a third in line. We will be there to help and guide them through the process upon your death. So out of this whole process, you want to make sure, and look, it's a good deal. I certainly know from a couple of people who've gone through this process that we want to ensure that you guys are appointed as advisors to the estate on death, because then once that happens, you'll come in, you'll help the executor charge at normal standard rates, and it can be a great process. In fact, Eric Sears, which is another shareholder of the LightYear group, he effectively is competing against a legal firm who is going through the same process and put a fee of $45,000 to manage the estate. So it's an upfront fee. When the client dies, $45,000 will go as a retainer to the legal firm to look after the executors and guide them through the process. So that's where there's some pretty good money there. Now, as your advisor, we strongly recommend that together we undertake a simple 3-step process to implement your will and any testamentary trust if required. So you need to know these, because this is, clients are going to want to talk to this. So first, complete the quick interview attached, send to us. So So there's a typo there. So I'll go and have a change it. So we can use as discussion points to draft your will. Review the documentation along with what happens to your superannuation and any other interests you may have. Have a meeting with lawyers from Abbott-Family to check the will and witness the execution of the will. So that's a 3-step process I laid out before. We can provide the above 3-step will review and update service for, as I said, if you're doing testamentary trust, if it's quite complex, generally $1,750 is about the mark, and then $2,200 per couple, or you might go like $2,700 per couple. We believe it is important to complete, it's up to you. I mean, you're the guys who are driving it. We believe it is important to complete an updated will immediately to provide stability, certainty, security if something happens. Look after your lineage or bloodline only, which is something that, you know, if you have a look at it, most of your clients are really up for. And quite often the wills they've got are really sort of out of date. And to prevent family provisions litigation. Due to our close liaison and extensive training by Abbott-Family lawyers, we can turn around the documentation within a week of receiving the data from the interview attached, which is important because in fact, we had one client that was sent to us by Ken Race, and I know, Ken, you're probably on the call, so thank you very much. But they'd been waiting 18 months from a lawyer in Bunbury, their family solicitor, to prepare a will, and effectively we did it with them in the process of a week. And again, that's another one where we did it was a direct referral from Ken Race, so that was that other process that we're using with Madden. But again, just work out, happy to talk with us or have a chat with Tony around that. So as time is the essence, can you please let us know whether you'd like to go ahead or happy to leave things as is? To get things started, we have attached a simple interview questionnaire. It won't take long, but we'll get the process started. This can be emailed us or faxed back. I don't know if anyone does fax. Anyway, let's go through the data, capture, will and testamentary trust. Who's to be executor? This may be held jointly by one or more persons, so they can write the executor. In the event that none of your executors hold capacity or are alive, who's to be your second executor? This may be held jointly by one or more persons. If you don't want a second line of executors, just put NA. Again, so this enables you to start. You're going to see that starts to be an easy process for you to complete the will and testamentary trust. Then we go down if there's third line. Now, specific bequests, I'll change this as just, bequest is a bit old, it's a bit fuddy-duddy. I'm actually going to change this to specific gifts. Do you want to make any specific gifts? And this is my preference. So generally, if you want to do a basic will, you can say, look, all the money is to be left to, for example, my spouse, Amanda, and my 2 daughters, Sophia and Tiana, if that was mine. And that's it. You just leave it there. If Amanda's not alive, then it's to be split further with Sophia and Tiana, and just it's all created between the 3, and it's quite easy. My preference, and you're going to see why, is we want to get our clients to start to drill down and think about specific assets. Now, for example, it could be their superannuation, but again, the superannuation can't be really directed through your will or estate. But basically what you want to do is, for example, do you want to make any specific gifts to any person, such as my investment property at 5 Smith Street, Collingwood, to go equally to my 3 bloodline children? My sister, Joni Smith, has received $100,000, or all of my estates to go to my wife, Janelle. So feel free to make as many as you want. So what we want to do is we've given that specific bequest. Do you want to impose any terms or conditions? So, for example, if it goes to a child who's 14, do you want to put it in a, do you want to limit, they can't touch it until they're 35 or whatever. So again, we've got 6 specific bequests, which really should cover most of the cases. Now, testamentary trust, you can provide in your will for your executor, along with the specific beneficiary, transfer part or all of their specific bequest to a testamentary trust where the beneficiary is the trustee, unless they're under age 21, where the executor will act as trustee under the bet until, sorry, again, that's a bit of a typo. I'd like feedback to give me on this anyway. Until the beneficiary is age 21 or some age that you desire, please complete the following. I'd like my executor to create a testamentary trust to protect assets for my bloodline. The agent beneficiary may become a trustee of a testamentary trust as be blah. So I think we could probably do a bit more on that one. But anyway, if there's any assets left over after paying all expenses of the estate and also paying out all specific assets, the remaining of the estate called the residuals are passed to main beneficiaries over life. So who's the main beneficiaries? There's more than one. What's the specific percentages? So you probably might want to give them a bit of space there. If the main beneficiary is alive, who are the next in line to receive the residual estate? If the second line of residual estate beneficiary, not who's to get your estate then. So that is the guts of the data capture. I'd love, again, for you guys to give me feedback on that so I can improve that as a process and a system there for you to send out. The only way you're going to find out is to send it out to the clients, see what happens, and then pull it back online. And again, I think there's enough in there on what's happening with family provisions, enough in there to get clients to really start to think, well, is the will that I've got appropriate now? And essentially, at the end of the day, you guys are the ones who drive the process, because you know where all the skeletons and the assets are hidden anyway. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to there's an interesting article, SMSF Intergenerational Wealth to Rise. So as I've said before, over the next 15 to 20 years, this is really important that there's $300 billion going to pass from SMSFs from one generation to another. That's going to be quite important. We need to make sure we look after that, and certainly I'll be looking at that on the 23rd and 24th of March. But more importantly, quite apart from super, the next 15 to 20 years, because a lot of people who don't have super, there's going to be more than 3 trillion. So that's 10 times that. So that's a 10xer, $3 trillion passing. And that's essentially the market that we're going for. You guys honestly don't need to go out and look for more clients. You've got enough clients there to do this wills and TT to come home for like the next 30 or 40 years, which is pretty crucial. So I've got Graham Wilkinson. Do you recommend that the family accountant and lawyer be executors with a family member? I would say no. The reason for that, and that's a really good question, Graham, is that the executorship takes up a lot of time. So I'm going to give you a bit of a play here. A good friend of mine, who's an accountant, acted as an executor for an estate. And again, if it's challenged, prepare that they will actually take you on and take you through the gutter. And he ended up being sued by one of the children who took aim under a family provisions challenge, and it took 2 years to resolve. So the better solution, Graham, is get them to work out who's the sharpest financially in the family, and it could be brothers, sisters, or it could be a friend. It doesn't matter. It could be a friend to be the executor. And then your role, and this is where it becomes really important, your role is to act as the advisor to the executors. And that's better because then you're not involved in the process. You can't be sued generally. Any family provisions challenge is not going to hang on you, but you'll be in there monitoring, helping the client as we go down the track. You'll still get fees, and it's a lot easier because it's normal fees. There's always an argument. I know he was taken on about the fees he was charging as the executor, even though they were accounting fees. Then you've also got a conflict of interest that if you are the trustee, it's very hard to put your firm in as the advisor to the executor if you're the executor as well. So my preference is hands off. If you are already in a position of executor, I would simply go through and just go to the clients, get them go through this process again, and then recuse yourself as being the executor. So what I've got here, this is the guts of our system. So this is our, you can see hot docs. We've got, oops, I've gone the wrong one, sorry there. I've gone through, here we go. So this is our hot doc system. So I'm just going to go through, you'll get this. This will come up next week. In fact, I'll get this up probably tomorrow. When you come in your product categories, you'll see here down in the estate planning, we've got here the last will and testament. Remember, that will in probably about 10 days time, just go to the simple will, and that will be there. So that won't allow testamentary trust. But tomorrow, I'll have up here test wills and testamentary trust. So test wills and testamentary trust. So that'll basically be up there. I'll put like a $500 fee on there, so no one's actually going to get it if they're on PAYG. I'm not sure if I could block it out. But for those of you on LY Strategist, LY Firm or licenses, please use it for yourself and have a go at it to your heart's content. What I'm doing is I'm going behind the system. What I've done here is you see, I mean, this is, when you have a look at that system, this is the guts of the system anyway. So you've got your test will, put your logo in there. You can put your initial logo to start off with when you're sending out a draft form to the client. And then you can effectively have a position that you can have a position there that we've got our logo in there. But this is the AM logo, AM001, which you can see there. The AM logo is from our the legal firm. So ultimately, when you get the sign off, we're going to have AM basically on there, which is pretty important. So let me go. If you can then go through this one. So we then go through the common parties. So sorry, I just got a bit of a phone call. Sorry, I never let that happen. But anyway, so we've set our document up, all the common parties. So if you think about it, and the way I like to explain it is, this is the CRM, or the client support system for all the wills and testamentary trusts. The more common parties we have in there, the easier this system is going to work. So what we want to do is we want to put everyone who's a potential beneficiary in here. So we need their name, their address, and then to put in extra, all I need to do is add another. So you can see here, I've put in Grant, Amanda, Sophia, Tiana, Nigel, Chris. So I could put in here and add another, and you can see the box comes up. So I could put in my mum, Barbara, Abbott. I go down 11 Old Coach Road. It's in Bray, South Australia, 5064. So we want to go down and we want to put as many people in there. So if you've got a friend who's potentially going to be an executor, we put them in. But you're going to pick this up anyway when we have a look at the data capture, because you're going to know from the data capture all the people who are named in here. And where you don't have their addresses or their full names, then obviously you can then liaise with a client for that. So we put our there. So that's now all the common parties. We then go down to the general. So with a life interest, so for example, what we have there is we have the testator. The testator is the person who obviously you're crafting and creating and establishing the will for. So we don't necessarily know the date of the will at this stage, so we leave that blank. Remember, we can always, once we complete this, then goes into the vault, and then we can open up later stage. So if we know the client's coming in later today, then we go back in, open it up, complete the date, and then finalise that document. Now, a life interest is, for example, generally if we've got a principal place of residence where it's held jointly between mum and dad, then effectively on death, it automatically goes, I'll assume that dad's died, he's the testator, automatically goes to mum. So that's not part of the will. But if it's held as tenants in common, then dad's interest in that property can be treated as a life interest. So if I do that, see if I check a button, and it's important, as we go through anywhere in our system, if there's buttons that says yes or no, we need to say yes or no, because if I go yes, see what happens on the left-hand side, watch this. See, the life tenant property pops up. So if I go down to that area, what's the address? And then you can see these are all the addresses for all the parties here. So I can actually put in there, let's say it's 30 Anchorage Certain, and then we work out, well, I'm going to do a life term. So if I own the property, and this is to go to Amanda, who's my spouse, then I've got to work out, well, what's my reasonable expenses for the upkeep? So what we do is the executor has to provide 5 years expenses for the upkeep of the life tenancy. So that comes from that general there. Now, if they've got joint ownership, obviously it's not going to have an impact. But if they do, if one party owns it or tenants in common, then you're going to have to work out whether you want a life interest. Otherwise, that will then fall into the estate. Now, of course, you can do a specific gift. For example, we could do a specific gift of the life interest. I'll show you what happens. So is there a life interest? And we could say, I'll just jump out that no. But notice how that drops that off. But if I've gone no, and then I come back and the client says, oh, yes, well, I do want to have a life interest. Watch what happens. I go, yes. And then I look at that and see how it's stuck there, that information I've stuck. So even if I fill it in, it never goes away. But here I'm going to go, no, I'm going to show you something a bit different. So we've then got the testator, and all I have to do is I've just got to grant Abbott. Now, if I wanted, and I'm doing we're doing 2 wills, I'll then go through the process again, put the same sort of people in, and I've got to work out how to make it simpler, but then it could be Amanda Abbott. We're going to leave it as Grant Abbott. Now, this is, remember, Graham, we had a look at this. This is where you put your details. So mine, Tony Anamoulis of Abbott-Family Solicitors, is the advisor to the executor. So it's the advisor to the executor. We then go down to the executors. So what I've done here is I've chosen my brother Nigel to be my executor. And again, just see how I can just choose out of the common parties, and that just pre-fills everything out of that system. Now, I've chosen there to add another. You can see here it goes to Christopher. So by adding another, it now means I've got joint executorship. Does that make sense? So I've chosen, so rather than going down, at this stage, I can always come back and do this. So for example, I could, for example, get rid of Chris and I could put in Nigel and my daughter, Sophia, who's 22. But I've actually chosen my brothers to act as my joint executors in this instance. Now, as time goes on, it's okay. Now, the good thing about it is this will and testamentary trust is stuck in your vault. So if something, and this is important, if something happens in the next year or two, you know, they've fallen out with their brother, fallen out with their executor or whatever, all you have to do is to go into our system, pull this up, and you're going to know what the document is. How are you going to know what the document is? Because it'll be set up in the folder. You'll know what the will is. So test will Abbott. And then you can go through the process of relaunching and recreating this will. And that's the beauty about this system, is it's never lost for you. So you can then go through and do a brand new will and testamentary trust for the client. So that's the great thing about the system. Now, the successor executors, so we've talked about this. This follows straight from the data capture. I've done Sophia and my wife, Amanda. So we've got the first line, Nigel and Chris, my brothers, and then Sophia and Amanda as my second line. Now, if Sophia's not live or doesn't want to carry on, then it goes straight to Amanda. But remember, you're in there advising along the track. So when you come around to doing it, you just need to say, well, do you want us to look after it? And that's where you put that into the system. Okay, is there any specific bequests that are provided for the will? So that's specific gifts. Again, is there a specific bequest? Yes. Now, what we do is, before we move into those specific gifts, what we do is we look at any duties, taxes, etc. Are they going to be borne by the beneficiary, or are they going to be borne by the estate? So you can choose who's going to do it. And it should be consistent throughout. So this one I've chosen the estate. So now we go down to the specific gifts. So the first one is Amanda Abbott. So are there any other persons not listed you want to add as a beneficiary? Then I've got, actually I'll go no on this one. So because I've covered everyone over there. See how Barbara's just jumped up there. So I've got 50% of my shareholding LightYear docs, my personal effects and motor vehicle. And here, if I wanted to, instead of the life tenant, so what I could do is I could put my property at 30 Anchorage Circuit. I think you get the drift. So I can actually put the specific gift in there if I wanted. Otherwise, I could have gone through and put a life interest here. So if it's a life interest, you'll see what happens there is that my wife Amanda gets the right to stay in this property or similar, the trustee of that life interest. So it's actually a trust, will be the executor. So that's going to be my brothers Nigel and Christopher for her life. And after that, it will then pass on to my residual beneficiaries, which are my daughters. But anyway, let's go back to the specific gifts. 50% of my shareholding LightYear. Now, do you want this asset to go into a testamentary trust? So if I go yes, then you can start to see all the T's and C's around a testamentary trust are actually created. Is the gift automatically transferred to the testamentary trust? And I would go no there. So do I want it automatically transferred to testamentary trust? No. So you have to click this, because if I go yes, then what happens is the executor immediately, so what happens here is Amanda puts all of those gifts straight into a testamentary trust, and that's my direction. So that's what I call a mandatory testamentary trust. If I go no, then I'm still putting the T's and C's and the clauses and the powers around a testamentary trust in here. So I would have to go in, blah, blah, blah. I'd have to fix all these up, which will go in a bit later. So I'll go through that a little bit later on. So Amanda, and then I've got Sophia, my 22-year-old daughter. See, I've clicked that. So she's to get 25% of the shareholding in the LightYear group. Tiana, who's my 17-year-old daughter and definitely not good with money. So I've ticked there, she's to get 25%. Do you want the asset to go in testamentary trust? Yes. Now, is it to automatically? Yes. So as soon as the shares are there, the executor will create a testamentary trust with all these T's and C's. Now, you'll see when I go into the document, there's enough there inside the document to create the T's and C's out of the estate or out of the will. My preference, though, is for the T's and for a separate testamentary trust to be built on my death that actually creates all of this. So the will and testamentary trust, the testamentary trust can form out of the will, and there's enough in there, but my preference is to have a specific document. You can see here. So it's automatically transferred. Is a spouse to be included? Well, no, because she's only 17, so I'll be excluded. Remember, the second beneficiary has to be bloodline or lineage. So I'm keeping it in my bloodline. So that now means if she ever gets married, her spouse is excluded from being a beneficiary. So I've got a bit of asset protection in there, maybe some family law protection. And remember, when we talk about spouses, we're talking about anyone who's lived with her for 2 years is now a spouse under the Family Law Act. Are there any related entities the primary beneficiary may have an interest in? So if I go yes, then what will happen is it may well be I can put in companies or trusts. Is the primary beneficiary the appointor? Now I've put in yes. If I go no, then obviously that'll be the executor who's the appointor. Now I've also put in some further terms and conditions. Now when you put this in, you're going to see that this pops up in the document a little bit later on, but the trust cannot be wound up or vest until Tiana is age 30. So we don't want her to come in, control it as trustee, wind it up, take all the money and then off. Now, in addition, she cannot access capital until age 25, and all income must be used for living purposes and also travel. So once I've done that, that puts a T and C inside of the trust. So even though the executor is building they could use this, as I said, create a trust. It's embedded into the will, so we can do that. Or alternatively, we can create a new document, but the new document would have to have all of these basically in it. So what I'd be doing is a leading member trust. Nigel Abbott, so he gets 30. I'll change that to 50 because I think I gave my other brother Chris 50. So that also funds them for being executors as well. And then Christopher, again, $50,000. Now, I haven't given anything to Barbara. If I wanted to, I just click in Barbara. And then, oh, sorry, no, I don't click Barbara. I would add another. And then I would go to Barbara, and I would just say there, I don't know, I'll just say $30,000. So that goes to my mum. And remember, I can add as many as I want going through the process. So I've got Barbara there. Do I want, now notice here, so see this, when this name comes up, it means it's cleared. When I haven't clicked this box, watch what happens. It just comes up with this beneficiary specific bequest. Now, I don't want to go to testamentary trust. So once I click 0 there, then effectively what will happen, oops, sorry, I'll go back. I don't want that one anymore. So I'll just get rid of that one. And we'll go back and how do I get rid of it here. So what I'll do is I've got to delete this repetition. So that's okay. I delete the repetition again. Okay, I'll delete that one as well. And I'll delete that one as well. So I'll get rid of Barbie because she doesn't need 30,000. And you'll see why I'll come back through a bit later on. So again, I don't want to put a testamentary trust. Now here's a new one. This is always getting specific. Who is going to get your social media accounts? So when someone dies, they're going to have potentially, if you're a professional, you can have LinkedIn. There's quite a lot of value in potentially social media accounts. So what we do here is I've chosen Amanda, but it's not going to go into a testamentary trust. The main beneficiary. So I'm tidying this one up, but what I'll do is I'll leave this open for you guys to test. But essentially here, the main beneficiary is going to be Amanda, my wife. Is the spouse to be included? So here is, if we want a testamentary trust, I'm going to make this optional at the moment. For this one, it wasn't optional, so we put it into a testamentary trust. You can see all the questions there. So there'll be a button, much the same as we do here. You know, do we want it to go into testamentary trust? If so, this is the main beneficiary. Then what will happen is this will all pop up, much the same as we've seen before. So we're getting consistency. Now, if Amanda's not alive, it goes down to the residual beneficiaries. And again, that's Sophia, and then I'd add another, and I've got Tiana. So they both get 50% out of the estate. Another one here is that the name of the guardian, if I've got a dog or a cat or a pig or whatever, then I've given this to Amanda. Now, obviously, she's a guardian anyway. But what we can do is my dog, Grandpa, if you've heard Grandpa bark a number of occasions, she becomes a guardian, and then the estate's leave the sum of $10,000 to look after the expenses of Grandpa. So you work out what that is. Again, it's just a nice little thing. Now, the binding vote, remember the executors, Nigel and Chris, Sophia and Amanda, they first line, second line. So in event of tied vote, who gets that? So effectively, we do all of this process, and that's the will and testamentary trust. So what I'm going to do from there is I'm just going to show you, normally I'd finish this, and you'll see that that's now assembling the documents. And then what I can do is I can then download the document. The only problem is, because it's quite a sophisticated document, it just takes ages to, well, not ages to download. Sometimes it freezes my Word for some reason, I don't know. So what I've done is I've got the will and testamentary trust, which you'll see anyway when you do your test. So we've got will and testamentary trust for Grant Abbott. Got all the Abbott-Morley stuff. Now notice how this is signed off by Abbott-Morley in the logo. So when you do your first iteration of it, you can put in your own logo, and then when it comes to final sign-off, just make sure you put the Abbott-Morley if you choose to do so. If it's a basic will, then there shouldn't be a big drama there. So this will is made on. Now remember, I haven't got the date there. So what I would do is, this is now sitting in my vault. Remember, it's in the vault. It's got the test will being the test will for Abbott. So what we do there is I go back, and that would then produce the date. Now, importantly, so this was made by me, Grant Abbott's correct and true record of my wishes and my demise. However, it does not seek to influence or direct any trust or super fund where I was a trustee or beneficiary. So I've seen so many wills try to influence the super, and I'm sure you guys have too, the trustee of a super fund, the trustee of a trust. And both of those are legal, but the problem is that if you've got a litigant in there and you've got a nasty lawyer, the danger about that is they're going to force the executor to start to challenge. Now, they can't do anything around that. So actually, I'll come back and have. Actually, I'll come back and have a look at it a little bit later on with that, Sharon. So good question. Now, revoke. I hereby revoke all formal wills and testamentary distributions previously made by me, and declare this to be my last will and testament. So the administration. So remember, appointments of executors and trustees. I hereby appoint my brother Nigel and my brother Christopher, subject to the consent as my executor and trustee of my estate. Each executor must consent to their appointment, and where there are more than one executor, any decision be by a majority decision. In the event of a tie vote, Nigel Abbott have the following finding vote. If one of my executors predeceases me, then the other is to become a sole executor. And then we've got, if those guys are not around, then it drops down to the second. Again, the binding vote, Amanda gets it. So then ongoing trustees, my executor shall be the initial trustee of every trust established by my will, including life tenant trusts, testamentary trusts and super proceeds trusts. However, the executor may decline such a position. If my will does not appoint otherwise, my executor may appoint the trustee. So for example, in the testamentary trust that we have, it's not executor, then it could be, for example, the guardian of Tiana would give that. Now, this is the important one for you guys, provision of advice. It is my strong wish that my executive obtains and considers the advice from my advisors, Tony and Royals of Abbott-Family solicitors making business. Any advice is to be properly remunerated for ongoing both my estate and any trusts arising from the estate. So that's useful for you, because what will happen is, if you're the accountant, you're going to be advising and establishing all these trusts and charging a fee for it. So again, going to the issue that Graham, that you looked at earlier, we'd want to make sure that this is where we put in there. Now, obviously, the initial administration for the executors, they pay debts, taxes, look at all of those sort of stuff. And watch out for insolvency. So that's pretty stock standard. Now, the beneficiary of my estate, what I'm doing is I'm going to change that. So I've already changed that. So this is from yesterday, but I'll include all the people that we nominated. If I go back to the relaunch, so up will pop the system that we've got before. This is the same as what happens relaunch. So all the people who are beneficiaries here will all get nominated in this area here. So specific bequests, including social media and pets, they're all in this clause 7. Any specific bequest may require the executor to establish a testamentary trust in respect of the bequest, which would entail the executor transferring specific bequest to a testamentary trust for the benefit of the specific bequest beneficiary. The terms of the testamentary trust are to be found in clause 14. So again, the very nature of this is that a testamentary trust can be established, but my preference is that if we were doing this, I would, if this was the estate, I would go in and I would choose here the leading member. I'd choose a leading member discretionary trust if I was going to do this. So if anyone has got a testamentary trust, I'd just be using the leading member testamentary trust, but what I'd be doing is calling it, the such and such. So let's say be Tiana Abbott Testamentary Trust. Now let's go back to the document. So in the event that Amanda Abbott and John Jones is to get, so you can see what happened is that was the other specific beneficiary. So I need to fix that up. So in the event that Amanda Abbott survives me by more than 30 days, they'll take a full and complete interest in the following assets: 50% of my shareholding in LightYear Group, my personal effects and motor vehicles. Sophia, 25% of my shareholding. Tiana, 25%. Now, if they don't survive you, they're not alive, then that portion there ends up going into the residual estate. Does that follow? So we do our specific bequest first. If they're not alive, it's not there, it doesn't bounce to anyone else, it bounces into the residual estate. Now, Tiana Grace, she gets 25, but this entitlement is to be automatically transferred into a testamentary trust. Now, that it's to be excluded. So this, again, remember, this is a test version. I've taken that out now. If I went and did a new version, it'd be okay. So then the beneficiaries tend to primary beneficiaries, bloodline or lineage, or those who share the DNA of Tiana. With Tiana as the appointer, and they would choose any successor appointers. She's the trustee or director of any corporate trustee. Obviously, if she's not able to, she's only 17, then what will happen is the executor would then appoint themselves or someone else to take her place. Here's where, remember we did this wording in this document here. So I just go down to Tiana. Remember this wording here just shows you how intuitive this system is, because when I come down here, you can see that now becomes a clause of the document. Even there, you can see I've done two dots there, which would have been interest there. Now, just to get 30, Chris is to get 50. As I said, this was from a system I did yesterday. Now, on my death, my social media accounts will be maintained by my executor according to the following directions. So if you have a look at that, that's a really good system for what happens on the death of a person. To social media accounts, goes through LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. Now, if Amanda Abbott survives me before the day, she's to take full interest in my social media assets. But I've actually got that into a testamentary trust. But this is an optional testamentary trust. So this is an optional to I chose yesterday. Where it's optional, it's only if she's got consent. If she doesn't consent for the testamentary trust, then all the social media goes directly to her. Don't worry about the formatting, I'll choose that later. And then we've got through all the blurb that I had there. Now, testamentary trust conditions, we've got these ones here, plus obviously clause 14. Any reasonable expenses, including duties and taxes associated with a specific request, shall be borne by the estate. Remember, we saw that. Now, if Amanda, so this is the residual estate. So I've done all the specific bequests, whatever's left over after expenses, after taxes, is what we call the residual estate. Does it make sense? So that's why I like going through the specific bequest before, looking at whatever's left over, then you get the residual estate. So the executor comes in and has got a roadmap of the specific bequests. So if she survives me, then again, here I've given her the option of doing an optional testamentary trust, but it's up to her consent. Remember, I put the T's and C's in there as well, so it becomes lineal bloodline. I could have chosen that it has to go in there. So if it has to go in there, then she has no ability to consent, which is not a bad thing, because what it means is then the only beneficiaries can be, well, effectively her bloodline from that. So if I have a child with her, then it would actually go down there. Now, if it does not survive me, then it's to be followed by the remaining clauses. So now, in the event the super death benefits are paid in my state, the survivorship requirement for Amanda shall be to survive me without the need to also survive by 30 days. So super gets paid in, then I'm going to have to work in, if I haven't put super up in a specific bequest, then it falls to the residual estate. Does that make sense? I could have actually put in there, for example, if I know the superannuation is going to the state, and you know I'm not a great fan of that, because I think it should be treated directly through an SMSF will or SMSF Death Benefits Trust, but that's for another time. Now, if she's not alive, then it's to go down to Sophia, which is to be transferred into testamentary trust. It's the same sort of thing there as well, but then it goes to her bloodline, but I've done an optional. And then Tiana, again, with her consent, I'd probably go down the track that, you know, must be mandatory for Tiana at this change. But you remember, when Tiana turns 21, we might change it, so we can then go and draft up a brand new will that would then change those terms. Pet guardianship is in there, goes to Amanda. General powers of the executor there, so they're pretty. Then you've got the specific powers, so, you know, there's obtain valuations, look after this, social security. You can actually determine what franking income, etc., where capital gains tax goes, insurance policies, blah, 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 and all that. Now, prospective beneficiaries we've got down there, entitlement to charge and payment of execution, executors and trustees. Again, although we've got there, my preference is the professional practitioner is not part of that. Testamentary trust powers, again, shall be established by my executor with a broad range of terms. So we've got the T's and C's of testamentary trust in there, which dealing with income and also capital, which can be put in there. You can do parallel testamentary trusts, you can do amalgamated, restricted, split, so on and so forth. So you can actually choose which one you want to do there. So as you can see, that's a pretty sophisticated set of will and testamentary trusts. I'd like you to go through. I've got a couple of questions here. Shannon says, I know you've got like, where the spouse are accepted as beneficiaries in the testamentary trust, does it give an option in relation to income or capital? Absolutely. So I haven't got there the fixed, if we wanted to make it discretionary, then it's fixed. If we're looking at going down here, Shannon, so I'm bouncing out here back into my system here, and I'm doing a testamentary trust. So for example, I've got my main beneficiary here. So you can see here I've got a testamentary trust. Then I can put here Amanda Abbott is only to receive income, or in fact I put income under accounting concepts from the trust with any capital amounts to be paid to my surviving lineage. And if I wanted to, I could actually put Sophia and Tiana, but that would also include their surviving lineage as well. So if I put that in, that then becomes a T&C on that testamentary trust. So then the capital only goes to Amanda. As you can see, I can virtually do anything. So I could put Amanda's only receive income under accounting concepts of, if I wanted to, of no more than $100,000 per annum, if I wanted to do that. Or alternatively, I could put under tax concepts. Now, if I put tax concepts, that would include capital gains. So in any way, which way, shape or form you've got there, I can actually put that into that system. So again, it's a lot more sophisticated. So I think, so I've got there, is there an option? So Shannon, that's got another question. Well done. Is there an option to have a backup appointor in the main beneficiary for the testamentary trust? So what I've got there is I've got in the document itself, when I go down to the TTs, just let me have a look. I think I don't, I have got down there, Tiana Grace, she's the appointor and able to choose any success appointors. So I haven't got that, but that's a good question, Shannon. If you guys want to go in and test it over the system, so what I can do there is the main beneficiary, the appointor. I can put in another button there, who is to be the successor appointor, and that would then get included as well. So that's not a, again, you can start to see how easy this is to customize. Just come back and put it in there, and then what I can do is I can carry that over into the system. There's still a few tweaks that I want to do here. So I'm giving it to you for the next week to, as I said, you're going to find it, and I'll let you know when this is up and running. So I'll this has been recorded. So I'll set the recording up along with the slides. Then what I'll do is I'll let you know. So I'll put this up, and it'll be called Test Wills and Testamentary Trust, and that will have like a big price tag. But that'll mean if you're PAYG, unfortunately, you won't be able to test it. It's only to be tested by our LY strategists, LY firms, and also licensees. So please test it for yourself, much the same as I've done. Think about it, how it all fits in, so that we get to come out within 10 days. We'll have our simple will here, and then we're going to have our advanced will and also testamentary trust, which is going to be pretty important. So from Kush, so Kush, for asset protection, is it better to set up automatic testamentary trust or leave as optional? So Kush, it's obviously the best thing there is to set up an automatic testamentary trust. So that's great. So thank you for that question. That's a really good question, actually. Now, without any other questions, what I'll do is at any point in time, see the support button. Please feel free to just ask us any questions about this. This is a really good, important time. What we're doing is a new system. Is now we're going to be starting to send out documents, but I'm going to be sending out test documents for our licensees and our unlimited guys or people on subscription package to test, and then we can come up with a final solution. So knock yourselves out, build your own system, and let's see how it goes. And remember, it's not a bad idea, because once you put that in to the system, you're always going to be able to, for example, go into your vault, and then you can have, for example, here, I've done a protector. Here we can actually go in. I did one for Tony. We can always relaunch. So build it all, and then as we go and make changes to it, you'll relaunch, and that will then build up the new system that we have there as well. So it's a very exciting process, and then we can take it from there. So anyway, it's Grant Abbott signing off, and thank you all for attending today. And look, I think this is revolutionary and very excited about it, and hopefully you guys are too. So I'll see you again soon. Next week, we're going to be having a session on Abbott-Morley and how it works in process. I'll get Tony in and we'll cover a lot of the issues around the legal and the litigation, well, not the legal, the litigation side. If you ever have problems, executorship, where you guys fit in, and you can just ask us 101 questions if you want. Until then. Anyway, it's Grant Abbott signing off.